New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani went from a buddy comedy smiling photo op with President Trump to doubling down on calling him a fascist. That was quick. Plus, will the new year finally bring peace for Ukraine and Russia? Revisions to the 28-point peace plan after lots of backlash. I'll explain everything. Those stories and more today, Monday, November 24th. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. Is the honeymoon over so soon? It was barely 3 days ago when President Trump met with New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani in the Oval Office, and the two adversaries were anything but adversarial. This odd couple was yucking it up for the camera. The memes after the meeting were fire. Which brings us to Sunday's Meet the Press, where Mamdani seems to have had a change of heart.
In that press conference with President Trump, a reporter asked you whether you believe that President Trump is in fact a fascist, a word that you've used in the past. You were about to answer. Then President Trump sort of jumped in and he said, quote, "That's okay. You can just say yes. It's easier than explaining it." So, Mr. Mayor-elect, just to be very clear, do you think that President Trump is a fascist?
And after President Trump said that, I said yes. And
so you do.
And that's something that I've said in the past. I say it today.
He also went on to agree that he believes President Trump is a threat to democracy. But that doesn't mean he thinks his meeting with the president was a waste of time. Mamdani says they discussed what is perhaps the biggest issue for voters and something they kind of sort of agree on. Affordability. I swear you will be so tired of that word by next November, but it is a big deal. The two spoke about the difficulties of building housing in the country's most populous city, and Mamdani said that while he stands by his plan to tax the rich to pay for those plans, he's open to other sources, ones that the president could potentially help make a reality. Someone not crying over Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's shocking resignation announcement, liberal firebrand Jasmine Crockett. On Friday, Greene announced that she would resign her post, not at the end of her term next year, but in just a matter of months when Congress returns in January. Now, this is coming after her very public falling out with the president, who renamed her Marjorie Traitor Greene. Well, none of her resignation plans sat well with Greene's congressional nemesis, progressive Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett, who, to nobody's surprise, had something to say about it yesterday on CNN.
I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You're on the other side of the president for 1 week and you can't take the heat. Imagine what it is to sit in my shoes, to not only be on the opposite side of him, but to have people like her who are constantly fanning the flames of hate.
To be fair, it was just last week that Greene went on CNN and apologized broadly for her role in the hate-filled politics that Crockett is claiming to rail against. Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation also spells trouble for Republicans in the House more broadly. The Constitution doesn't allow for temporary members of the House. Representatives must be duly elected. And the thinking is the earliest that can happen is March, which means the GOP's razor-thin margin in the House will be that much thinner for a few months. Thomas Crooks, the 20-year-old who tried to shoot and kill President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, could have and should have been stopped by the feds. So says Chris Swecker, a retired assistant FBI director who spoke exclusively to the Post. He says that the Bureau had multiple, quote, missed opportunities to stop Crooks from his attempted assassination of the then presidential nominee. Now, Swecker also claims that former director Christopher Wray was desperate to define Crooks as a far-right lone gunman. Now, I told you last week about the extremist social media post believed to have come from Crooks. Well, Swecker says that if even half of those posts turn out to be real, Crooks should have been on the FBI's radar. The 24-year veteran of the Bureau told the Post, quote, "That constitutes a miss on the part of the FBI," before giving his former colleagues a grade of C- for the investigation. Now, he went on to accuse the FBI of having a bias toward right-wing extremists, basically saying that if they were believed to have been behind a crime, it surfaced fast. But if it was a left-wing ideologue, it got glossed over. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is optimistic after what he said were, quote, the most productive and meaningful discussions yet between the U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Geneva, Switzerland. The meeting Sunday came after the release of President Trump's 28-point peace plan last week. Now, that proposal had critics on both sides of the aisle who thought it was just far too generous to Russia, and it seems that Ukraine agreed. A joint statement from both the United States and Ukraine released by the White House on Sunday night said in part, quote, "The discussions showed meaningful progress toward aligning positions and identifying clear next steps. They reaffirmed that any future agreement must fully uphold Ukraine's sovereignty and deliver a sustainable and just peace. As a result of the discussions, the parties drafted an updated and refined peace framework. Both sides reiterated their readiness to continue working together to secure a peace that ensures Ukraine's security, stability, and reconstruction." But earlier on Sunday, President Trump took to Truth Social to slam Ukraine, posting, quote, "Ukraine leadership," the word leadership was in quotes there, "has expressed zero gratitude for our efforts, and Europe continues to buy oil from Russia." That post forced Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to post his gratitude, thanking the U.S. for its efforts, but stopping short of endorsing the original 28-point peace plan. Long story short, it was a huge mess. And now it's maybe just a regular-sized mess. Now, I asked the Post's deputy managing editor, Michael Zenny, about it all, starting with whether or not this deal, the latest in a long line, has the staying power needed to end with peace.
President Trump has said he wants a deal by Thanksgiving, but that is also looking increasingly difficult. So what we saw was a big summit in Geneva, Switzerland today, in which Secretary of State Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met with the Ukrainians and basically tried to sell this deal to them. And look, the thing is, this is all closed doors. It's all behind the scenes.
I also asked him about the messaging around this and how confusing it's been, especially with the back and forth we've heard about the U.S.-backed plan in just the last several days.
The messaging has not been super clear from the beginning. So, part of the confusion here, rather, is that it seems like Secretary of State Rubio spoke to a bipartisan group of senators about this deal and really seemed to kind of disavow it, according to what the senators said publicly. But then he came back late last night and said, no, this is a U.S. authored deal. We've also seen people like Lindsey Graham, who is a powerful voice on this issue, on Russia. He's very much a hawk, saying this is a starting point. This should be a starting point, but that there's a lot more that needs to be done.
Well, we'll see what comes of these latest revisions. If you haven't been keeping up on the weird as hell love triangle between Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to underscore a senior administration official, and formerly engaged journalists Olivia Nuzzi and Ryan Lizza, well, buckle up because I am about to take you on a ride. Nuzzi is about to release a book about the whole affair. She and RFK Jr. allegedly had quite the filthy little tryst. Now, RFK Jr. is married to actress Cheryl Hines. Well, Nuzzi's ex, Lizza, whom she reportedly cheated on with the HHS secretary, couldn't just let that all go without telling his side, and so he has in a bombshell confessional article on Politico. Lizza shares some absolutely revolting texts that he says he saw between Kennedy and Nuzzi. There's one sex act I had to look up on Urban Dictionary, and boy, do I wish I didn't. The mental image it brought up was grotesque, abhorrent, all of the above. Now, one of the more PG-13 exchanges allegedly written by Kennedy to Nuzzi is, quote, "I am a river and you are my canyon. I mean to flow through you. I mean to subdue and tame you, my love." Somehow, that little bit of poetry is more nauseating, I think. Now, I should note, Nuzzi says her relationship with Kennedy was not physical, but if any of what Lizza shared happens to be true, it was definitely sexual. I will link to the Post article all about it if you care to torture yourself with more details, but let me just warn you again. Okay? You have been warned. I am not sorry. Have you gone out recently and tried to pick up a latte or a sandwich at a spot that doesn't accept cash? You can swipe, insert or tap your way to checkout, but a couple of crisp bills won't get you anywhere. Well, a proposed law in Ohio aims to turn back the clock for shoppers in the Buckeye State to a time when cash was king. The currency access to spend here, or cash bill, would require businesses and government offices to accept cash for payments of up to $500. Now, the new law could have some big impacts on major retailers like Target, Walmart, and Costco. These big box stores have been increasing the use of self-checkout methods that often don't include the ability to use cash. And while that could force those major retailers to adjust their strategy, it might not mean hiring more staff. The bill allows for live humans or automated cash registers. Now, the Ohio bill mirrors one that could have national implications, introduced in the Senate by Pennsylvania Democrat John Fetterman and North Dakota Republican Kevin Cramer earlier this year. Has anyone used self-checkout and not needed a human being at the store to come and help? Is that just me? I make those things glitch every single time I use them, and then you are standing there with the camera getting your face and you look like a dying Victorian child in that light. Just me? It can't just be me. That is a tech I cannot get right. But podcasts? Now that is a tech I can handle. So make sure you like and follow the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, and I'll see you tomorrow.